And we are live. Hey Nate.
Hi.
So I think this is the first time I have someone who I genuinely am speaking with for the first time. So I'm actually going to get to know about you and win loss analysis. So thank you so much for doing this. Can you maybe quickly just introduce yourself for uh, anyone who's listening in?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Nate, Nate Bagley. I'm a career marketer. I've been in my first job out of college was working in a marketing agency. And then I've worked at multiple software companies, and I've done everything from like enablement to content to community building to events to like demand gen stuff. And I have a pretty well-rounded background. And right now I work at a company it's called Clozd, and I'm the head of content, and we provide win-loss analysis technology and services to B2B companies. And we can get in more into the details of what that means. But essentially what we do is we tell B2B companies why they win and lose deals, why they win and lose customers. And it's pretty powerful. So happy to dive in and give more details about that today.
Well, yeah, 100%. So I'll just sort of maybe share what I understand from win-loss analysis just by the name, right? Because I think we've been doing it, but I hadn't used the phrase, right? I'm not sure if other companies are in the same space, but as a marketer, we often, for example, when we're running ads, we're doing SEO, we sort of are tracking our SQLs, and then the sales teams come back and says, hey, these or the pipeline close rate is so low that our ads are not profitable, and then we sort of look at, okay, but why are they not closing? So it's not something that we do, like it's not something we look at week on week, right? For most companies, if you sort of give us access, maybe like great. So these companies, so we look at like disqualification reasons more often as marketers, but not like a lot of marketers, including us, stop at, hey, we generate an SQL, we generate pipeline, this is qualified, and then the rest is sales, right? So
Exactly. So
that's what I know.
this is one of the this is one of the biggest mistakes I think marketers make is we love data. We love knowing how our different channels are doing. We look at data to inform us about the performance of our website. We look at data to inform us on our social media efforts. We look at data to tell us about how our ads are doing. We look at data to tell us how the events that we do go. We do partnerships, and we have metrics for partnerships, and all these different lead generating efforts that we do as marketers. We have metrics to tell us what are we doing to convert a prospect into a lead. But once we hand that lead off to the sales team, we don't really do anything with. We stop following them. We stop gathering data on them. And so basically what win-loss analysis is I guess I'm going to clarify a little bit, because when I say win-loss analysis, I think a lot of people think of the old school way of doing win-loss analysis, and we do it a lot differently today. The old school way of doing win-loss analysis is you track deals in your CRM, the outcome. So maybe, you lose a deal, and then you leave data in the CRM to say, hey, this is the competitor that we lost to, or this is the reason we lost. Maybe it was pricing, maybe it was bad timing, maybe they ghosted you, or there's so many different reasons that you can lose a deal. You track that in the CRM, and then you go, okay, I'm done. And if you're maybe really diligent, you'll go and do like a post-mortem, and you'll get your sales team or your marketing team together, and you'll talk about one or two key deals at the end of the quarter, at the end of the year, and go, hey, what do we know about these deals? Why did we lose them? How could we win them in the future? And then that's the old school way of thinking about win-loss analysis. We're just gathering some data in the CRM and maybe having conversations internally. The new school way of doing the new school way of doing win-loss analysis is it's on a continuous basis. As part of your sales process, you're reaching out to and interviewing or surveying your buyers, not your sales reps, your buyers, to understand what it is you did well and what it is you didn't do well, what you could have done better in the sales process to have won their business. And you can also interview your closed won deals and figure out, what did we do well? What could we do better? And as you find out that information, as you learn what your strengths and weaknesses are, according to your buyers, not according to your reps, according to the people who are actually the people you're trying to solve problems for, the people who are actually giving you money, when you get their perspective, then you have a much clearer idea of what products you should be building, what your messaging should be and how to improve it, how you can strengthen your sales process, how you can adjust your pricing and packaging, and what integrations you might need to be building out. All these, you find answers to questions you didn't even know you needed to be asking in order to win more revenue. And so what we do is we provide that service of going out and interviewing buyers. And then we have this really awesome technology platform that will allow you to look at each deal independently and what your strengths and weaknesses were, and then to zoom out and look at your deals across your entire pipeline and see the general trends by team or by region or by product or by deal size. And it's really powerful to be able to look at your buyer data that way.
So I think before we get into the fanciness of the software part, right? So maybe I'll share a story of something we did, and I thought it was brilliant, and now I realize it's not. It's just something that so many other people do. So what we did was, we've recently started, every time we lose a deal that we really wanted to close, like if we've lost something and we really wanted to close it, and it wasn't obvious during the sales cycle of why we lost that deal, we send out this email to that person, like to the POC, saying that, hey, we'll pay you like X dollars if you just come on like a 15-minute call with us and just tell us what what happened. Like, we won't try to sell you, just come on a call. And this is basically my closed alternative. Like, this is like from one call, like these 2 pages and then these 2 pages.
I love
This
it.
has information of all of our, like a lot of our competitors. I got information of about like how do they do their sales, what do they show in their sales processes. I got information on what do they focus on, how much do they charge. I paid, I think, $100 for this, which is, I think, the highest ROI call I've ever been to, like
Really?
this year.
It doesn't
And it was
surprise me, but at the same time, I'm really proud of you. I think you are a little ahead of the game. Like, I think you were thinking very creatively when you did this. That's awesome. Keep telling me your story. I want to hear more.
Yeah, so this was us, so we don't do it for one customers. I think we should. We've only done it when we sort of lose deals which we really wanted to close. So at that point, we've sort of done this. So do you think like this doing, so one-off interviews are already very useful, and we've already started doing it like 1 or 2 months. Like, we started like last month essentially, right? We've never done it before that. So do you think there are like levels to it? Like, should you start here? And what's like, if I'm not doing it right now, and and if I see the final thing, it might be too big of a gap.
Yeah.
Like, what's like level 1?
Yeah. So we have this concept that we talk about internally here at Clozd called the win-loss maturity curve. And essentially, there's like 4 or 5 steps along the way. And the very first step is guesswork and assumptions. So most companies start out with like, hey, we should probably understand better why we're winning and losing. And maybe they'll go talk to a few sales reps. They'll get a couple of like anecdotal stories, and they'll start to make their own hypotheses. They'll start to guess, oh, it's probably because, we're losing to this competitor because our pricing is maybe too high, or maybe we're not customizing or personalizing our demo enough, or maybe we're missing a specific product feature or something like that. They'll have this assumption, and then they'll make changes based on that assumption, and then realize like, we're kind of guessing here. So then the next step is like, well, let's go to an actual source of data, and they'll go to the CRM where they've been logging, their closed won and closed loss reasons, and they'll quickly realize when they get to the CRM that the CRM will tell them what has been happening with their deals, but it doesn't really tell them why. Like you can't really get the same depth of information as you just found out from like a drop down field in your CRM as you can from having an actual conversation with somebody. So at that point, they'll go, okay, well, we need more information. The CRM isn't telling us everything we need to know. So the next step is like, hey, let's pick a project. Let's pick a problem that we want to solve. Maybe we want to find out why we keep losing to a certain competitor. Maybe we want to find out why a certain team isn't performing very well. Maybe we want to figure out why win rates dropped by 5% in the last quarter. Maybe we want to figure out why we're struggling so much to close enterprise deals when the small and medium-sized businesses are closing super quickly. Like what are we missing in that enterprise deal sales process that's preventing us from winning deals? Whatever the problem is, they'll pick something and be like, we're going to go investigate this issue. And they'll go talk to 10, maybe 15 customers who fit that description, who fit that profile that could give them valuable information. And they do win-loss analysis on like a project basis. So it's like, oh, we want an answer to this one specific question. And then the next step in that evolution, after they do that project and they glean some really powerful insights, it's like, wow, our customers have a lot of interesting things to say. Or we learned so much from our buyers. Like we even learned things about our company that we didn't even know we should be thinking about. Like, this is really cool. Or we learned things about our competitors that we can't just find online, scraping data and stuff like that. And so then they'll say something along the lines of like, we should do this maybe more in an ongoing way. There's enough value here that instead of doing this on a project by project basis, we should probably be doing it continuously and maybe covering as much pipeline as possible. And so that's kind of the evolution. Is you start with some questions, and then you gradually get to the point where you're constantly in conversation with your buyers, gathering this data. But going from, hey, I wonder why we're winning and losing, and that guessing in that first phase, all the way to like the comprehensive interview as many buyers as you can and gather as much data as you can. Like you're right. That's a big jump. So for most people right now, they're in the phase between like collecting data from their CRM and doing a project of like wanting to investigate something in more detail.
Yeah, 100%. I think also I've done this myself. Like I would export data from the CRM and try to make a pivot table, and then I would realize, hey, the formatting is all off if it's like typed in, because you would want this to be typed in, but like someone's just sales people would just write like in shorthand, and like some stuff is off. There's no way you can make it. So then you spend an hour cleaning the data, and then you try and see, okay, this is the most common reason in some cases. But yeah, like I've done that. So before we get to more how, I just want to understand who should be doing this. Is this sales, product marketing, head of like who, like customer? I'm not sure. Like who should be doing this?
Yeah, I mean, it's different for every company. We find that it works best. It has the highest impact when it's championed by either sales or marketing, by one of those revenue generating teams. So oftentimes they'll own the program, they'll like sponsor it, and then a product marketer will maybe run it on a day-to-day basis. But the people who need to be invested, the people who need to like be bought in and looking for more information on what buyers are saying, typically falls in the departments of either marketing or sales.
And for marketing, right? Let's say if I think let's be honest here. Like most marketing teams, KPIs are not like they stop at either pipeline or pipeline influence or SQLs, right?
Yeah.
So why should marketing care? Like because most of the people who would see this or the snippets are marketers.
Yeah.
So why should marketers care at all?
Yeah, I think marketers get two complaints from sales. One complaint is you're not giving us enough leads. And the other complaint is all the leads you're giving us suck. They're not good leads. And I think the way to solve that second problem, if you figured out the first problem and you're generating pipeline, but you're noticing that the leads you're generating aren't closing, this is your opportunity to go in and figure out what's happening between when you generate a lead and then when they make a purchasing decision. And there are essentially two levers that you can pull in your business to increase revenue. You can increase pipeline, and the more pipeline you have, the more revenue you're typically going to generate. But the other lever that most people don't pull that's really powerful is increasing your win rate. It's winning a higher percentage of those deals that come across your table. And when you increase your win rate, you're creating more revenue more efficiently. And the way to do that, the only way to increase your win rate is to have a better understanding of why buyers are not buying from you. What is it that's preventing them from saying yes? And so a marketing team, who is often seen as a department that is more of a cost center, they just spend tons of money on ads, and they just spend tons of money, like overhead on headcount. A marketing team that invests in win-loss analysis can become a profit center, because essentially what they're doing is making themselves responsible for everything that happens after a lead becomes a lead. They're making themselves responsible for facilitating sales, selling at closing deals at a higher percentage. And if that's something that you are interested in as a sales leader, then win-loss analysis is like absolutely a tool, the only tool and the only product that can help you close that gap.
I think in my head, if I just from the top of my head, right, there's a lot of benefits to this, right? So one, you mentioned the quality of leads perspective. The second thing that I can think of is maybe like our positioning is just awful, right? Because I realized that we did some things and we were losing deals because we just thought this is table stakes, and so we never said it. So we lost deals because I'm like, wait, like people didn't know that we did that, like it wasn't that obvious. So that it could be a positioning problem. Maybe it could be an audience problem, like, hey, maybe just don't go after an audience or don't go after a competitor because they genuinely will beat you in deals. Like it's hard to admit, but hey, don't do that. Maybe you find out better messaging which you can then use in your campaigns, because the way people say things and I've realized when doing this is people often, like at least marketers associate, because we sell to marketers, often associate themselves with certain qualities, and they would choose the agency that is better, that talks more about what they believe in versus any other factor. So okay, so that's like better messaging maybe. Then maybe we can get more budget for marketing. Like that's an obvious one. If you're closing more deals, your pipe skills are worth more, so you can spend more, which is no marketer will say no to more budget. And lastly, which I think is overlooked, is I think also a better SQL definition, right? Is because I have seen so many people just um, like the SQL definition is so bad that because of which like the deal close rates are bad. Like essentially they are bad, but that's the reason is the definition of the SQL itself is wrong. So
Yeah.
maybe that's like the another thing. So we got a good question here, right? I think that's a good question to sort of go to. Are there certain methods or frameworks one can use to conduct a win-loss analysis?
Yes. Before I get to the framework, can I just share a couple quick stories with you to
Oh
validate
yeah,
what you just said?
100%. Yeah.
So these are just some success stories that we've seen with our clients. I recently read a study that on average, salespeople spend about 64% of their time doing things that are not selling, whether that's administrative work or updating the CRM or prospecting, things like that. They're only spending about 34 to 36% of their day or their time actually like on sales calls. And so we had this revenue leader who was like, I want to make my sales team more efficient. So we started studying his win-loss data and realized exactly what you said, like that his reps were spending a lot of time selling to customers, a specific subset of prospects that were not closing. And not only that, if they did close, they were churning within like a year. And so he identified, instead of an ICP, an ideal customer profile, he defined a UCP, an unideal customer profile. And he said, anybody who meets these qualifications, don't sell to them. Politely decline, send them somewhere else. And immediately, like overnight, the efficiency of his sales team went up because they were only spending time talking to people who were qualified buyers, and their win rates went up and their revenue went up. We have I heard another story of a CRO who was studying his win-loss data, and in his closed won deals, a lot of customers were saying, wow, we're just so thrilled with this product. We honestly would have paid more for it. And it came up enough times that he's like, oh man, are we undercharging for what we should be doing? And so he met together with the executive team, and they decided to raise their prices by 30%. And they raised their prices and didn't see any impact on win rates. They were still winning the same number of deals, but they were making 30% more revenue. We had a product leader actually who was studying the win-loss data at another company, and she realized the number one reason they were losing deals was, this is something else you mentioned, was integrations. They're like, oh, we really need these integrations, and it doesn't look like you have them. And this product leader was like, but we do have them. We just haven't, I guess we haven't been talking about them enough, or maybe like we haven't been promoting them on our website or talking about them during the sales process. So she was frustrated that she was losing deals because the prospects didn't, the leads, these people that were interested in buying her product didn't perceive that they had features and integrations that they actually had. And so she's like, I'm going to make a change. So she pulled together marketing and sales and the executive team and the product team, and they built out a couple integrations that they were missing. And then they changed things on their website, the messaging on the website, to focus more on the integrations that they had. And they changed the sales process to focus on some of these integrations that were really important to buyers. And within 1 year, they saw integrations transform from being the reason that they lost deals the most to the reason that they won deals the most. It was the highest leading indicator of why they were winning deals. And so these are things that are going on inside people's businesses. And like every business has issues. Every business has opportunities that we don't even think to consider. But when we talk to our buyers, they reveal to us like, oh, there's revenue hiding here. Like if you just changed this one thing, if you were a little bit more vocal about your integrations, or if you raised your prices a little bit, or if you just sold to us a little bit differently, we would be more likely to give you our money. So those are just a small snapshot of many of the outcomes that we've seen just recently from some of our buyers. So that's like the power of win-loss analysis. So now I know I've just went on this huge rant, but if you want, I can jump into the framework.
I love stories because I think that's like the actual qualification. Like that's how you show value. Like these are like actual stories, and I could imagine each one of them happen. So yeah, like just the frameworks would be helpful now.
Yeah, I mean, I just talked to a head of marketing. Also, sorry, this is one last story. Who told us that the reason he loves our tool is because when he sits at the executives table, he's like the chairman. He gets to run the show. Because if product says, hey, we want to build this thing, and he can go, no. Look, this is what our buyers are saying they want built. Or if the sales team's like, we want to sell this way, he goes, no. This is what our buyers are saying the messaging should be, and when we should introduce this or talk about this and how we should do it. Like this is, and he's become the person that the rest of the executive team looks to for clarity on the direction they should be moving. And he's now creating alignment across all the departments. So anyway, that's a marketing story for you.
Yeah,
now let's dive in.
Now the champion of the buyers.
Yes. Well said. So now framework. Great.
Please. Yeah.
So a good win-loss analysis program, if you're doing this for the first time, will follow 6 basic steps. They're pretty simple. And we have a course on this that I can tell you about at the end, but the basic framework is step 1 is you need to identify a problem to solve. So Stephen Covey wrote a book, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of his habits is start with the end in mind. This is one of the mistakes a lot of people make when they're doing starting a win-loss project, is they're like, oh, we'll just go start talking to customers and see what comes up. And it's like, you kind of need to start with a specific problem that you want to solve and find customers that can help you find a solution to that problem instead of just talking to everybody.
Is there a problem except increasing win rates?
Yeah, I mean, increasing win rates would be like the general umbrella, but I would focus on a problem that's like a geographical thing or a competitor. Like, why those questions I've kind of summarized in earlier in the conversation, but it's like, why are we losing to this competitor? Why is this product not performing very well? Why is this geography? Why are we not seeing success there? So the more specific you can be to a certain extent, the better. If you're a really small company, just interviewing buyers is probably just a good practice to have. But the bigger the company, the more narrow the focus you need to have. Once you've decided on a problem that you want to solve, the second step is you need to come up with an interview guide. An interview guide is essentially a framework that will help you stay on track when you're talking to your buyers, a list of questions that will help you kind of help guide the conversation a little bit. It's not supposed to be like a rigid, like a survey is really rigid, and you don't want your interview to be as rigid as a survey. You want there to be some flexibility, but having a guide will help you stay on task. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who've tried to do their own win-loss project, and they start talking to buyers, and each buyer takes them in a different direction. And then after they've talked to like 10 buyers, they come back and compare notes, and they're like, oh, I didn't ask all the questions I needed to ask to get an answer to the problem I'm trying to solve. And now none of the data is worth anything. Like they can't find any trends. So having that outline, having that interview guide is going to help you stay organized. The third step is scheduling win-loss interviews. Now this is challenging because, how do I put this? Have you ever had a friend who had a baby and the baby was ugly? And you meet the baby and then you go, oh, they're so cute. Oh, and it looks like Yoda mixed with Gollum, like some hybrid child. And you're just like, oh, inside you're kind of screaming, but outside you're just so nice and kind. Yeah, you're nodding your head. Yeah, I think everybody's had that experience. I think that's a very similar experience to the experience buyers have if they've had a negative experience with you when you ask them for feedback. People are reluctant to tell other people the truth, especially when it's negative. And so how do you incentivize, or how do you get a buyer to agree to a 30-minute phone call with you if they didn't have a great experience? A lot of people are going to see their participation rates and are pretty low. And so figuring out like, how am I going to reach out to to my buyers? How frequently am I going to reach out? Am I going to incentivize them? It sounds like you offered $100 for your buyer's time. Coming up with a plan for outreach and scheduling and making it as efficient and easy and painless for your buyers as possible is really important in refining that process. So now we've gone halfway through and we still haven't even talked to a buyer. We've picked a problem. We've outlined the questions we want. Now we've reached out and tried to schedule interviews. Once you schedule an interview, now it's time to actually perform an interview. Now this is the easiest thing to screw up, but it's also probably the most fun part of win-loss analysis. And this is I think when people think about conducting win-loss interviews, they think like, oh, I'm just going to go talk to a bunch of people. And they don't think about everything that happens before the interview and everything that happens after. So, performing the win-loss interview, this is like a skill in and of itself. Using that interview guide is going to be really helpful. But some important tips to keep in mind if you're planning on doing this yourself is, one, it's really important to take a minute or two at the beginning to build rapport. Like, you want to set your buyer at ease. You want to make them feel comfortable, ask them where they're from, how their week is going, and kind of shoot the breeze for just a minute so that they relax and settle in, and you can build a little bit of trust with them. And then as you work through your interview guide, pay attention to anytime there's an opportunity to dig a little bit deeper. And sometimes it takes 3 or 4 open-ended questions pursuing the real reason why, or pursuing like the real core of an issue to get like the answer you're looking for. So another tip is like, part of that is going to require you to learn what open-ended questions are going to get people talking. So a question like, if all things were equal, like if pricing was the exact same, if timing was the exact same, and all you had to choose between was our product and the competitor, who would you have chosen and why? Like if you take, because a lot of people will default to price. Oh, it was just too expensive, or oh, that, you know, but like if you can step back a little bit from that, you can get more information. So learning to ask those open-ended questions during an interview will be really powerful. And then the third tip I have for conducting an interview is always repeat back to the buyer what you heard them say to you, so they feel understood, and to make sure that you got it, like that you really that they said everything they wanted to say and they said it right. And oftentimes you'll see when people when they hear their words repeated back to them, they either want to clarify because they got something wrong, or they want to tell you even more detail about the thing that you're curious about. So those are a couple tips for performing an interview. Once you've performed the interview, you have to dive in and like actually look at the data. And this is can be a really tedious thing to do. You know, you transcribe the interview, and then you have to go through and like look for what were the key trends, what were the things that they talked about. And then maybe you have 10 different interviews, and each interview's 10 pages of transcript. So you have, you know, 100 pages of documents to go through and connect, and you have your spreadsheet and your pivot tables, and you're trying to figure out what are the trends and what's most important, and what are my buyers saying. But identifying those trends is really important, because sometimes you'll hear a one-off anecdote, and you'll be like, oh, that's really powerful. That's something that we need to change. But nobody else feels the same way. It's just the one buyer, and you don't want to make an adjustment to your entire company, to your sales process, to your marketing messaging, to your offer, if it's just one buyer who had an issue with it, or one buyer who found a problem with it. So doing enough interviews that you start to see what we call saturation, or you start to see, you know, the same 2 or 3, 4 themes kind of come out of multiple interviews, that tells you this is something that's worth pursuing. And then the last part, especially if you're at a big company, the last part is reporting your findings. So now that you've planned everything, you conducted the interviews, you've dissected and all the information and figured out the trends. Now you need to get that data in the hands of people who can actually make change. So if you're working at a big company, you know, you might find information that will help customer success retain more customers. Maybe their onboarding process is broken. You might find information that can help the marketing team improve their marketing messaging. You might find information for the sales team that they need to make an adjustment to their demo when they're talking to a specific type of persona. You might find a trend around pricing and packaging, that, you know, certain customers are finding your pricing confusing, or maybe you're delivering your pricing options too late in the game, and your competitors who are competing against you are giving pricing earlier on and setting up your buyers to make a decision earlier in the process. And by the time you get pricing to them, they've already made a decision. Like, there's so many different things that can impact the outcome of a deal that, anyway, when you start to find those trends, the most important thing is to get that data to the right people and get it to them quickly. A lot of people who do these win-loss projects, you know, these one-off things, they'll go conduct a handful of interviews, they'll study all the data, build the reports, and then by the time the people who need the data get it, the data is like 3 to 6 months old. It's taken them so long to get the data that now their competitors have had 6 months to build even more of a competitive advantage, and to steal even more market share, and to steal even more clients. So getting that data into the hands of the right people as quickly as possible is really important. So those are the 6 steps.
So when you were saying this, right, I was in my head, I was like, I wish someone compiled the most common win reasons and lose reasons, and I could just, like, I know it's like it's not a one size fits all thing, but I could at least take inspiration from that and maybe implement some things or some changes which are obvious.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if you ever create something like this, please, do you already have something like this?
Yeah. I have to go. That's actually a great content idea, is figuring out those trends. One interesting thing that we have discovered is that, you know, we've done tens of thousands of win-loss interviews, and on average, buyers name between 4 and 5 different reasons that impacted the outcome of the deal. So it might be 2 positive, 3 negative, or something like that. But on average, buyers don't make their decision based on one factor. It's typically 4 or 5 different factors that influenced. It could have been timing, it could have been pricing, it could have been the sales process, it could have been relationships that they already had with other vendors. It could be the CEO's nephew does something similar to what you do, and he's going to hire the SEO guy that's his nephew over an agency that knows what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like there's so many different factors that come into play on any given deal. And so, yeah, we should, I think we have the data somewhere. I just don't know if we've published it publicly. So we should publish a list of trends of the most popular.
Yeah, that'll be amazing. Yeah. Apart from the guide, is there anything else that you think we can sort of, link to, share with people that will be interesting?
So if you want to go through the process of starting your own win-loss analysis project, like if you're going from, maybe we've been guessing for a little while, or maybe we're relying on CRM data and now we want to go talk to some buyers, we have this awesome course. You just go to winloss101.com. And it's a 6-part course that walks you through each of the 6 steps I just listed. We've got a lot of other resources that will help you along the way. Like we have an interview guide that's like a template that you can use for the interview guide for your business. We've got some template emails for like reaching out to schedule interviews with your buyers. And each one of these lessons features our internal experts here who've done tens of thousands of win-loss interviews. And we talk about like how to run an effective and efficient program to get answers to the questions that are plaguing your company so that you can win more deals and generate more revenue. So anybody who's in that situation, I think it would be like a good move to go check that out. And if you are interested in hiring a third party to do it or testing out having a third party, you can go to freebuyerinterview.com. And we will actually do an interview for you on your behalf. So you'll just fill out a little form, and we'll get a little bit of information about your buyers and your company and your industry. And we can actually go out and do a win-loss analysis interview for you and put it in our platform, and you can go in and check out the value of that there. So.
Nice. That's actually, and whenever you do come up with the common ideas, like do send it over. Like
I will.
I really want to see that now. Thank you so much for doing this, by the way. I'll link obviously to both the course and the free interview that people can claim in the wherever this get posted everywhere. If it's on YouTube, then in the comments. If it's on LinkedIn, and on the description on top. So wherever it is, we'll sort of add it there. Please check it out. Thank you so much, Nate, for sharing the
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of fun and I had a lot of to think about, because it already was, I think, the most like highest ROI thing I've done, like that one interview. And then now I'm thinking, hey, like, why didn't I do more? Like,
yeah,
which is just sounds like obvious, but yeah, like, thanks.
Yeah,
that might help.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to see if you do choose to do more, how that goes. You should let me know.
Oh yeah, I will. And I'll definitely send you a message that, hey, this is what happened. This is what I found
Good.
out. Happy with that. Awesome. Thanks, Nate.
Great talking to you.